afternoon. It's exactly 1:45 and the kitchen staff is with us. Isn't that marvelous? They're not staying back to clean up the kitchen. Welcome to our Voices for Children event. Now, that lunch was a wonderful lunch, was it not? Let's give a round of applause to the group of people that put on the lunch. They are the Sunday Seekers, a fellowship group, and they were gracious enough to host the lunch for us today. My name is Sandy Kitts, and I'm serving as president this year of the United Methodist Women. Thank you for attending. Our objective today is to educate ourselves on a topic that is one of the United Methodist Women's topics for 2021. We are a mission organization that educates ourselves. If you are a member of the United Methodist Women, would you please stand so we can see who you are? Wonderful. Thank you for all for attending. Today's event is being live streamed by JJR Pastor, our wonderful pastor. So if you know someone that wanted to come today and didn't come, you can take them to the FlushingUnitedMethodist.org, and on our website you will be able to find this live streamed event, so you can watch it later on. Isn't that wonderful? So we have two individuals to introduce to you today. From Voices for Children, we have Sarah Zeiber. She has been with Voices for Children for 3 years. She is the vice president. She went to Northern Michigan University where she learned about writing grants, and somebody that can write a grant is worth their weight in gold. Now, Claudius Holman was originally booked to come and speak today, but she sent Sarah, and she told me on the phone that Sarah is worth her weight in gold. We also are blessed to have Rudy Lopez, Lieutenant Rudy Lopez from the Genesee Sheriff's Department, and he's instrumental in the GHOST program, and he's going to tell us what GHOST stands for, because I had no clue. He is a graduate of Ferris State University. He is a big football player, as you may be able to tell, and he has been with the Sheriff's Department for 20 years. So we hope that you both can explain to us what your programs are about and give us examples of how your program has positively impacted lives of people in our area. Now, in the back of the narthex, there are 2 offering plates, and we'd like to contribute to these 2 organizations today. If you have a checkbook, you can write the check out to United Methodist Women, and in a couple weeks is our annual day where we spend all our money for the year, the money that we raise. And we will be adding to what we collect today to send off to the 2 organizations, because that's what we like to do. We support missions. And now I'm sure you all have plenty of questions, so I'll ask Sarah, why don't you start?
I was telling Lieutenant Lopez maybe I should just use my teacher voice, but I'll use a mic. So if I get too loud, I need you to make little hands at me. So thank you so much for having us. I got to speak with Sandy last week, and it is always critical for us to come out in the community to educate, because, and we were just talking about it before we started, the statistics are alarming. In our community, it's 1 in 4 children who will face abuse before their 18th birthday. So 1 in 4. I have a little 8-year-old boy. I think about that a lot when I'm volunteering with this classroom, when I'm thinking about Sunday school. And what that means, the hopeful piece in that, is that every single adult has the ability to change a child's life. Because even if a child faces abuse, as long as they have a caring, trusted adult in their life, that's a huge protective factor. And so we're going to talk about human trafficking today. And I am going to encourage you that the best thing that you can do is be there for the kids in your lives, because it makes a huge difference. So.
All All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having us. I work for the Sheriff's Office. I've been there 20 years, and I am the lieutenant in charge of the GHOST team. GHOST stands for the Genesee Human Oppression Strike Team. We're responsible for investigating human trafficking and narcotics, because narcotics and human trafficking go all in one, and that's an oppression of our people, right? Drugs play such a huge part in a lot of people's lives. And human trafficking. So Sheriff Swanson, how many of you guys know Sheriff, everybody? Hopefully. Okay, awesome. So Sheriff Swanson had a vision, all right? And in that vision, I don't know if you guys know what OUR is, Operation Underground Railroad. He goes and does basically mission trips with them to rescue people all over the world. He's traveled to many countries to save people from human trafficking. And these are like the movie human trafficking, like where they're grabbing kids off of planes or off of resorts and they're doing things. And he's been part of rescue missions that have saved numerous kids. On the way back from one of his trips, he thought, why aren't we doing this here? Because it happens here. It is happening here. And I say it's happening here because that's the name of the movie that's going to come out shortly within the next few months. Within this year, definitely. And it's a documentary on human trafficking. Did anybody get to see that at the Capitol Theater while it was here for opening night? You did. Did you feel it was very informative? Every day.
That's the piece, right? So a lot of times when we think about trafficking, what first comes to mind is those situations where a child is abducted. But I'm going to tell you, in our community, a high number of the trafficking that's taking place, that child or teenager lives in their home. They are being trafficked and they live at home, often with parents or grandparents. And I'm not anti-internet, but I am very pro educating our children how to be safe on the internet because they can be on there sharing information that they shouldn't be. And like I said, I have an 8-year-old. He already wants to be playing Roblox all the time, and he wants to do that online. And for an 8-year-old, he doesn't know how to navigate what's online. He doesn't know the ages of the anonymous people he would be playing with. And so when we think about trafficking, we really actually have to change our mindsets in order to be able to keep kids safe.
So, and that being said, that is what our GHOST team does. The sheriff had this vision to bring this back, and we did. It was trial and error. We started it, and we started with just a few deputies and sergeants, and now we have a dedicated team that the community supports hugely. Technology these days makes it so easy for predators to get their claws into kids. And it's as simple as just send me one picture. All right. And from that picture, we call it sextorting, right? So it's send me a picture. Hey, send me this picture. Hey, you're beautiful. Hey, and it's the grooming process. All right. And these people start the grooming process, and then it goes to a picture. Then it goes to, if you don't send me more pictures, I'm going to send these to your parents and to your school. And these kids don't know how to get out of it. And if you say anything, I'm going to send this to your parents and your school. And it just keeps going and going. Then it's, hey, I want to meet up. Hey, try this drug. Well, now they're addicted to heroin or fentanyl. And then that's the process. That's the grooming process. And it starts with technology. And we have one of our analysts, Tori Dallas. She's phenomenal. She does all of our internet stuff. She's the person I go to when I have something on the internet and I need it looked up. And she says just giving a kid a phone is like would you let your kid go to a bar at 12, 11, 9, 8 years old, a full adult bar? You wouldn't, right? Because that's common sense, right? It's not a safe area. It's not a child's area. Well, that's what a cell phone is. The cell phone is unlocked to everything. That internet is never ending. There's even the dark web. How many of you guys have heard the dark web? That's a scary place. We have deputies trained on how to navigate the dark web. Anything happens on there, and it doesn't have to be from anywhere. It could be from across the world. It can be from across the country. And next thing you know, it's just these people just taking advantage of our children. So technology is really, and it hinders law enforcement because there's, believe it or not, there's people that are way smarter than cops that know how to hide. And it's a process for us to find them. All right, so my group, we set up operations. We've done operations across the state. We've gone to the UP. We're actually going to the UP again. And we set up and we pose as 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds. We've even posed as a 12-year-old. And we pose and we try to draw people who want to take advantage of these children or who want to have a date with these children. We draw them in, and then we arrest them. The other way we go is I have my analysts looking. They're on the internet all day, every day. I don't know how they do it. That would drive me nuts. But they look for, because there's certain websites that these people use. Everyone remembers there used to be one called Backpage. There's now a bunch of them. Skip the Games, Hookup. There's so many websites that they use. And they scour those, and we look for young females or males that look too young to be selling themselves. All right, and sometimes they don't come straight out and say they're selling themselves for something. They say they offer like a free massage or paid massage, erotic massage, all that stuff. All this stuff is online. You just got to look it up. So we'll set up a date with them, and then we rescue them and get them to our services. We partner with Voices. We partner with YWCA. We partner with all the hospitals, and our goal is not to victimize the females who are being taken advantage of, because people are like, well, it's just prostitution. Well, it's not, because some of them don't have a choice. All right, so our goal is to save them and get them to a better place. We just saved 3 the other day that were making horrible life choices, and we were able to get them, they were adults, so we were able to get them to the Y. And we were able to get them, there used to be something called Hope, Not Handcuffs. It's called something different now. They changed the name.
Aaron changed the name.
Mr. Rubio, right?
Yeah, Aaron Rubio. He's great.
Yep. So they help us out too. And then we also work the narcotics aspect of it. In the last month and a half, the Ghost team from the Sheriff's Office has seized over $2 million worth of narcotics. All right. The sheriff did a press briefing, and he talked about the fentanyl. Fentanyl is super deadly. It is a horrible thing. It is super addictive, and we were able to take 3,000 hits of fentanyl off the road, which is a lot. That saved numerous lives. All right, so that is what the Ghost team focuses on. We will go anywhere. We will teach. We have taught. We've gone across the state to teach other concept teams. We've worked from the Thumb to the west side. We've worked in Ohio a little bit. We've gone up into the UP twice now, going for a 3rd time. And we partner with other sheriff's offices across the state, and we're teaching them how to do this. We have a playbook that we give them. This is yours. This is how you do it. This is what you do. Since 2018, we've had 100% confession rate. Not one person has beat any of our cases. And we don't dictate what they get, whether it's prison, whether it's probation. That is not us, right? That's for the judge and prosecutor. But on our end, our goal is to take bad people off the street and give kids, women, or men a second chance. Because it happens to men too. It happens to boys. So that is what the Ghost team does.
Yeah, and so what we do is the social worky part of that. That's what my family calls my job, social worky. But the reality is, these victims, to become survivors so that they're not victimized again, they need support services. So I got into this on accident. It wasn't my job at the center. As Sandy said, I raised the money. I also oversee our prevention and advocacy programming. And we were partnering with the Ghost team for an operation, and I very suddenly got a call from my boss, Nisi, to come down to the jail where they were and bring snacks and tampons and water. So I grabbed those things and quickly rushed down there. And what had happened was our staff who was supposed to be helping, one of the victims had gone to high school with her, one of the adult victims, and had had a really strong shame reaction. So I'm from the UP originally, so people down here don't know me. And so I went in there and helped the woman out and talked with her. And that was my first, but certainly not last, time being there on site or getting that call in the middle of the night. So right now when child victims show up at any of the 3 area hospitals, I get a call. Usually it's Friday and Saturdays for whatever reason, middle of the night. My ringer is always on. And we respond to those because we know if the abuser, if the trafficker wasn't the parent, that parent is going to be terrified, horrified, upset. And so when I'm at the hospital, what I do can look all kinds of different ways. Sometimes it's calling the different shelters to help if the family becomes unhoused because of the trafficking or abuse. Sometimes it's playing with a 2 or 3-year-old for hours and hours while we wait for other partners for Child Protective Services or other partners to come and assist. So we have to be very, very flexible. But it's critical to provide these support services because a lot of men and women who end up in sex for survival situations, end up exploitable by trafficking, it is because some things are going really wrong in their life. And like the lieutenant said, sometimes that is them making really poor choices. But working these operations, I started to notice a really upsetting to me pattern. And what that was that a whole bunch of these, especially female victims, especially teenagers and younger adults, someone in their life had died. So someone older than them who cared about or for them. Sometimes it was an aunt, sometimes it was a grandfather or a parent figure. They had died, and that person started to self-medicate with substances. Now, it doesn't always start with the substances and then result in the trafficking. Sometimes trafficking happens and then drugs can be used to control the victim. But in a lot of these cases, someone was trying to cure their pain. They were using what they could find or get access to try and help their broken heart. And then, they end up in this room being questioned and really, really wanting a cigarette, and I'm handing them some water and thinking about how do we prevent it from getting here? Because it's really hard once these victims have been trafficked. What we see, unfortunately, with a lot of teenagers, especially teenagers in foster care, they end up trafficked again and again. And that's absolutely what we want to avoid, right? Because people and kids and teenagers are really resilient. So if it's a single instance of abuse or, a single instance of trafficking, there is more hope intrinsically than when it's happening again and again, when it's becoming a pattern. And so this is where prevention services, this is where coordination of services is really critical, because we want to make sure that we're wrapping services around these children, these women, these men, so that they don't end up trafficked again. And this is where everyone has a part. Like the lieutenant was saying, there is still in the world kind of this mindset. When I was growing up, we always just called them prostitutes. So this idea of a human trafficking victim being someone who's being pimped out, that makes sense to me now, but it's not really part of the common vernacular, right? You guys probably still think of and hear of prostitution. But in so many cases, prostitution is actually trafficking, if that makes sense.
And when she says that, it's, and I know some places have legal prostitution, but this is where somebody is forcing them to go sell their body for money or drugs, and they give all of those proceeds to that person, right? So that's the trafficking part of it, all right? Or transporting somebody, and those are all things that are violations of the law. It's been a great honor. I've been at the sheriff's office for 20 years. I started in the jail. I've always been a certified officer. I worked in courts. I've worked on the road. I was a supervisor on the road. I worked for the first drug team, which was the posse, and now I'm working for the ghost team. I run the ghost team. And after our first op in 2018, the sheriff reached out to me and said, "What'd you think?" And I said, "That's one of the most gratifying things I've ever done, because you're in our reverse ops where we're selling, we're posing. I mean, really, you're talking to when those guys are chatting us, they're talking to 40, 50-year-old men police officers who they think are, 13, 14, 15-year-old girls, right? It's almost like that To Catch a Predator thing." And he said, "Well, why do you say it's the most gratifying?" I said, "Because we're the voice for the voiceless. Like, this guy was going to take advantage for money of a person, and people will say, well, that's just prostitution. Well, it's not. These are our children. And for every one we catch, for every child predator we catch, there's 25 lives, 25 kids that have been saved from that aspect. So I think we're at like 3,775 now is what we're at. So we've made 137 arrests just in those reverse ops. We've rescued numerous girls. One of our biggest cases, there were a 13, 14-year-old couple. You probably remember this. They got arrested a year ago. These girls had been driven from Toledo to Grand Rapids to Flint to Saginaw, and every day the way they kept doing it was, "Hey, you're going to go home tomorrow. You're going to go home tomorrow. You're going to go home tomorrow." Well, they'd just stop at a new town, and the female would sell these juveniles for sex to make money, and then they'd move on to the next town. Our analysts found them. We ordered up a date, and we were able to make the arrest in a local area here at a hotel. Those girls had sex with over 400 people. 400.
And think about that age that they are. I volunteer with a youth organization locally, and one of the young women I work with is 13. So when I think about that number, and I think about the things that we talk about, and it's school, and yeah, it's boys a little bit, but imagine being 13, 14, and you've been exploited that much.
And I've heard people, and I've had people even in my church, why does the sheriff put their pictures out there? Why not? We want you to know that it could be your next door neighbor. It could be your son. It can be anybody. That's the scariest thing about this crime, is it can literally be anybody. All right? We've had, I can't remember how many operations we've done, so many. And every time we do one, especially the ones where we're posing as children, my goal is not to get anybody. Because you want to have that, I want to have faith in humanity, right? I want people to say, hey, we're going to do the Christian thing, like, hey, but it always happens. We always get at least one, sometimes 8, sometimes 4, and it's hard to watch, but it's gratifying because you're taking a bad person who is going to do a bad thing to a child off the street. And I hate to, it's not doom and gloom. There's people out there that want to help. We want to help. We're a small team. I have 4 people assigned to me, and we work pretty much every day. Our phones are ringing, we're doing stuff, we're taking tips, we're taking everything, and plus we're working the narcotic side of it. So it's nonstop. And these guys are nonstop. So they deal with everything, not just from what Ghost does, but from the entire region pretty much. Because they deal
Genesee and Shiawassee counties.
Shiawassee. So it's just nonstop. And it hurts. But the kids are learning quickly that there's somewhere to go. There's somebody to talk to. My biggest advice to people is look for things that are changing with the young children. Like look for, if you knew a young lady or your daughter or your granddaughter was vibrant and outgoing one day and all of a sudden now she's dark and quiet and sad, those are indicators that something's going on in her life. And we have to do the Christian thing and be a good listener, right? Because we always don't know the answer. We don't know what's going on in their life. Kids' lives these days, I have a daughter who is now 14. Oh, my Lord. And I some days I'm just like, wow, and I don't understand it, right? But you have to be that voice. You have to be that person that they can look to and say, I trust her, or I trust him, or I trust, so that they can talk to you. All right. I strongly recommend if you have children, grandchildren, check their phones, check everything you can. There are so many ways to hide apps. There's hidden apps. My son, who is he's 9 years old, he plays Roblox, he plays all that stuff. Well, all these video games have chat features now. And all these predators know these kids are on these chats. So they'll friend them, and I'm learning as it goes. I have an app on my phone that tells me anytime someone shoots them a message, and there's so much to it. But these are all avenues that these predators can get to our children. So you have to stay on top of it. You have to watch it. You have to be vigilant. And if you see something questionable, talk to them. That's what you're there for. That's what we're here for, right? We have to be that voice, and we have to be able to guide them in the path.
Be that parent or grandparent, honestly, because if you have kids and grandkids in your life who you love and care about, listen to them about their friends. A lot of times they see warning signs. I talked to you about the young girl that I volunteer with. We ended up making a report because a friend of hers was talking to someone on Instagram she shouldn't have been. And because of what I do in my day job, I am talking to my son, I'm talking to the kids in my life about safety. And that means that they're out there in school and with their friends being like, what do you mean you sent that person a picture? That's not okay. And telling me. And you want to be that adult who is learning that information because you can get them help. Because, like we were saying earlier, a lot of times when kids are being sextorted, it kind of snowballs and they don't know what to do. We've had cases where, how in video games you can buy things, sometimes with real money, but sometimes with like game points. We had a kid that was being extorted for game points because he wanted different skins for his avatar. So yeah, be that adult, be that trusted adult, be that adult who is listening, because if your child or grandchild, suddenly completely falls out of touch with one of their friends, or, their friend becomes withdrawn, that's something that you can do something about, and we encourage you to do so. And I want to give you all a chance for questions, but before I do that, we were talking about, it not being all doom and gloom. So when we just had a wedding in my family, and so all my family was like, how do you do that? Like, how are you not just super depressed? The answer is that this is a really hopeful job. When we are doing our job right, when we are helping victims become survivors, they want to help too. And often kids who have survived this go into social worky fields or become nurses, and they know what to look for. So I do this job because I work with the strongest, most amazing children and teenagers, truly. And they're healing, and they sometimes are backsliding and all of that. But if I can make a difference for one of them, and hopefully I've made a difference for more than one of them, that's worth it to me, and that's hopeful. So, do you want to say
No,
anything?
I think we can open it up to questions. Go ahead.
We think about the victim, but what are the common traits of the trafficker?
Well, so that's the tricky part, is you can't really say that, because it can literally be anybody. It could be your mom, it could be your dad, it could be your uncle, it could be your brother. It can literally be anybody. And we've seen it. And I say all those because we've seen that. We've seen parents sell their kids on the internet to make money because they want to pay their bills, or they want the new cell phone that's coming out. We have seen all of these things happen. So it can literally be anybody. The trick is to identify the victim, okay, and then get them to trust you to be able to confide in you. And like I said, that is, you know, your granddaughter, she was rainbows, butterflies 2 weeks ago, and now she's doom and gloom, sad. Well, something's happened, something has changed. So you wanna be that ear that they can say, hey, this is what's happening. Because a lot of them are just afraid to talk because they think they're in trouble. Well, you're not in trouble. I'm here to help you, and that's what you have to portray, I would say.
So this isn't just specific to trafficking. This is, you know, in general for adults or older kids who are perps. They push boundaries. Your kids might feel a bad gut feeling. You might feel a bad gut feeling. Someone in your family might avoid them or recommend that you avoid them. Listen to your kids and teach them from a young age that their body is their own, and that you are a safe adult to talk to if something happens that makes them uncomfortable. Our staff, we go out into schools. We partner with schools, and we train kindergartners and second graders. And that's too late for some kids. And it's not sex ed. It's nothing like that. It is a very empowering program about what keeping secrets that make you feel bad can be bad, about where on your body no one that's not a doctor should be touching you, because we see kids at the center, they don't know any better. If someone's been abusing them their whole life, they just think that's how affection works. So it's really critical to teach children that their body is their own, and to teach them if someone pushes their boundaries, if someone is feeling them out, to see if they'll tell, because they might do just a little something that to see if your child's going to tell an adult or keep it a secret, because then they'll know they can do the next thing. So, you know, it's not a perfect answer because it can be anyone, but kids should have respected boundaries, and that'll help. That'll go a long way to helping.
Right here.
Could you repeat the questions on the mic so that the online will understand
Yep.
the responses?
Okay, we got you. Go ahead, right here.
I have a comment for my question, and that is, in my training, one phrase that was very helpful in my thinking was, in approaching a child or an adult, is not to ask what's wrong with you, but what has happened to you. And it changes the focus. So I think that's an important phrase for me to have kept in the forefront of my mind. And the other thing I wanted to ask was, after intervention of any kind, what about long-term processing for both the victim and the perpetrator? Because if you just punish the perpetrator for that event, eventually it's possibly or probably going to continue with other victims.
All right, so your question is, what are the long-term things that we do to help the victim and the perpetrator, right? To try to, well, she can
Is
be the
it
victim.
Alta? Oh, you guys, Alta's a Casa Volunteer. So one of our programs that I haven't talked about at all, and I adore, is kind of a long-term intervention. So Casa Volunteers work with kids in foster care who are at higher risk intrinsically of being trafficked. If they have been removed from their home, something has already happened to them. So Alta's comment was that it is helpful to approach victims and not ask what's wrong with you, but ask what happened to you. And I completely agree with that. As far as long-term services, so our center, we only work with victims. We do not allow perpetrators or alleged perpetrators on our campus for safety. Long-term, we do have in-house therapy. We also partner across the communities in Genesee and Shiawassee counties to work with therapists because we really believe that that can be a helpful long-term intervention. We also have support groups, both for children and teens who are survivors, but also for their non-offending caregivers. Abuse situations are really disruptive for a family and they're scary, and so our therapy team facilitates those, and they're great. There's a family meal, so there's some like fellowship, and then there are some activities. So that's kind of on the victim survivor end.
For the perpetrators, that a lot of that goes to what happens to them in the legal process. The sheriff, everyone's probably heard of Ignite. We try to educate our inmates. We try to show them that there's a different lifestyle. I don't know how they would go about changing someone, because honestly, in my head, some of these people in my head are just, it's a sickness. Like they can't stop. It's like a craving that, and I don't know how to fix that. And I don't know that the courts know how to fix that. I don't know how jails know how to fix that. But I'm not going to say people don't change, because people can change. You could do one horrible thing tomorrow and change your life and be a great person after that. So there are multiple programs that the adult offenders go through, whether it be in prison, in jail, because education's deadly, right? You give someone education, that might let them know that I don't need to do this. I can do something else with my life. So that's the goal, is educate, educate, educate. I don't know how you fix, that's a sickness that I don't know how you fix, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, with our services, we want to break cycles of abuse, right? When there is generational abuse happening in families, too often when I'm talking to a non-offending caregiver, they're in tears or really upset, and they let me know that something happened to them when they were a child and they never told. And so they're saying, I can't believe I was trying so hard to keep them safe from this. And I commend them for trying really hard to keep their child safe. And we don't control everything that our children do, So many adults work outside the home. We're sending our kids to childcare, and in some cases, when adults work non-traditional shifts or for a plethora of reasons, you have to use what I call patchwork childcare. So that means, one day of the week they're with this person and another day of the week they're with this person. And the thing that scares me about that is who has access to the child when they're at that house. Because I'm going to tell you, we see babies and toddlers who've been assaulted, and it wasn't the person providing care, it was someone who was coming into that house. And so they feel terrible. Obviously, the adult is distraught. But I tell you that not to ask you to be scared of everyone, but to be really thoughtful about how can you be a concrete support for other people. Sometimes that's childcare, sometimes that's helping find quality childcare, and how can you look out for these risk factors and danger signs.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so The benefit of our in-house team, none of our services cost any money to the families or anyone. So that's a big thing, is you don't want them to have to be worrying about finances with everything that's going on. We partner with Genesee Health System, so community mental health. And then we do have some private practices that specialize with children who will refer out to and work with, especially if an adult wants services for a sibling who didn't face abuse or trafficking. We'll sometimes partner in that way. But we very much, unfortunately, because of the high volume of abuse in our communities, we can't serve every child in-house with therapy. So we certainly do partner.
Go ahead.
What are some of the reasons that the instances of trafficking and abuse are so high in our counties and our state?
Well, the reason I would say is so this is all in the last 2 years, because of this pandemic, has really jumped up even higher because of the dedication to the internet, and even for school, we're finding stuff on kids' Chromebooks. We're finding, the schools do lock those down, but kids are really smart. They figure it out. They know how to go here and go there and log into different servers and do stuff. So the internet has intensified this, and it's the reason, it's hard to say. You would hope that it wasn't a problem. You would hope that people would, this is America, everyone's free, you get to do what you want, but to be held down and, the grip on narcotics and the whole grooming process is what really drives this process, because the first movie that came out, did anyone see the first movie? It was, The Ring of Silence. Did anyone see that movie? So that one really breaks down the grooming process. That is on, I want to say Prime Video it was on, and something else. And it breaks down a girl who's got a boyfriend and the grooming process, which leads to the boyfriend selling her basically for money. So that was The Ring of Silence, and then the next one's going to be It's Happening Here. This is our goal is to have this shown in every single middle school, in every single high school across the country. It was very empowering to see. It's very scary, the information that you saw in this documentary. We anticipate it being the most watched human trafficking documentary ever. It's very informative, and it breaks down the process. So I can't, the money drives everything. And human trafficking has surpassed narcotics as the largest money maker across the world.
So, and sorry, we didn't repeat the question. It was about why rates are so high in this community. And I heard something, this is unverified, but you might be able to verify it. 75 crosses 69 in our community. So as far as transporting things, people, drugs, that makes it kind of easy.
So the way you got to look at it is for narcotics and drugs, and for people, the 75 corridor and 69 corridor, 75 would take you to Florida, 69 would take you to Chicago, and those are main corridors, and they'll take you to Canada, both of them. So in the drug area, this is a hot county because you have the meeting point for both those major intersections, right? And you can get anywhere in the United States from both those expressways. So that is another thing. We are a spoke. Chicago's a hub, Detroit's a hub, Flint's a hub, and that's just because those two major intersections.
Another thing I'll say quickly, but I say this with caution, so hear my asterisk. Poverty, right? Because people who are in poverty can be desperate. And so when we see those situations of a mom trafficking her kids, sometimes it's drugs, but sometimes it's so they have a place to stay. And she has 4 kids, and she's thinking, well, this one's 11, and the other ones are younger, and at least this way we'll have a place to stay. And I'm not excusing that. Please don't hear me excusing that. But what I am saying is that it's not okay that someone's in a situation where that's the choice they're making.
Do you see, just to follow up on that, because I was going to ask that also, do you see any correlation not only between the economic situations, but any racial issues as well? Just given, where you said those hubs were and what the economic status is in just those three places.
So I'm going to not get too high on a soapbox here, but I'm going to tell you because we work with the foster care system, and in our community, that's 400 to 600 kids at any given time. Specifically, Black families are more likely to be investigated. Their kids are more likely to be taken outside the home and not reunified. And so these kids are at higher risk for being trafficked. Absolutely. Not necessarily by a parent, but when kids end up in foster care, we have to make sure they don't fall through the cracks.
I saw a question back here. Okay, the first one was The Ring of Silence. That one is out and playing. And the second one is It's Happening Here. That will be out shortly. It's Happening Here.
It's happening here. Yep, and these are films.
Films that are very informative, I would say.
The Ring of Silence film was written and directed by Nicole Wallace, who's married to Dr. Mike Wallace, the eye doctor, and they live in Flushing.
Yeah, it's very, very, very well put together. All right, we got time for a few more questions. Go ahead.
There was a question from online. I've got a microphone, so we're good.
Yep.
But the question was, what is the role that pornography plays in the connection to the human trafficking?
So, pornography is like a sickness also too. I would tell you that things are more and more accepted, which some people are okay with and some people aren't. I would say it probably plays a huge role because people pay for it. And when you see somewhere you can make money, that is something that happens. It's like being a drug dealer. They know they can make money by selling this. Well, if I can sell pictures of a kid to make some money, then I'm going to do it. But now you have to, what we call sextort the kid and say, hey, send me more pictures, and then it's, hey, let's meet up. So I would say it plays a huge role.
And those pictures are online forever.
Ever.
The other thing I'd say about pornography is it is not a good place for sex ed. This is why it's really critical to make sure kids have good resources, because so much of pornography out there is going to teach kids really unfortunate things about sex, and I could easily see that, translating into being trafficked.
I saw one more question over here. Go ahead. How prevalent is human trafficking in Genesee County? I will say it's prevalent enough that we had to form a team. If there wasn't a problem here, we wouldn't have a team. Like I said, every time we do an operation, my goal is not to get anybody, and that would restore a little faith in humanity for me. But we always get one, and most of the time it's multiple.
Yeah, the demand exists in Genesee County, so there are absolutely instances.
Do you work on bringing proper sex education in like high schools or schools at all?
The ghost team doesn't?
No, not at this current time at Voices for Children. Oh, the question was, do we work on bringing sex ed into the schools? We do not. What we do bring to the schools is the program I was referencing. It's called ROAR, and that is body safety training for kindergartners and second graders, but it's not sex ed.
We got time for one more. Go ahead.
Can I just address this lady's question? You asked about how prevalent that is in the Genesee County. My son and daughter-in-law are in security at Bishop Airport, and I had asked him some time ago, because I am involved in United Methodist Women and human trafficking, what kind of training they get. And he said, oh, okay, so you're not getting any training, really. He shared with us yesterday, they've saved 2 women
is, like I said, that's why we're here and talking about it, right? We want you guys to look at stuff like that and say, man, something, you know, being a cop for 20 years, I can tell you, I can look at certain things and the hair on your neck stands up and you get those little tingles. You're like, hey, something's not right here. Something doesn't look right. Maybe I should just ask one question. Sometimes, and I've traveled around this county and I've taught active shooter and how to respond to an active shooter. And I always talk about, in my presentation, the power of hello. It is the most powerful word you can say, because that's a starter for me and you to get to know somebody, right? And sometimes that word changes somebody's day because you acknowledged a person. So my boss makes fun of me because I'll walk down the road and I'm like, hey, how you doing? Hey, good morning. Good morning. Hello, how are you? Hello. That's a powerful word. Just acknowledging somebody else, that could be the key for them to give up something to you, right? To confide in you. So the power of hello is unbelievable. We got time for one more. Go ahead, right in the back.
So the question is about the sex offender registry and data collected from it. Is that, you know, available so people can make decisions about where to live?
Well, the sex offender registry is always live. You can always check that. Most of the people that we've arrested, well, all of the people we have arrested are now on the registry. That is one of the punishments that has been dealt out, you know, for our people who have been arrested. There is no human trafficking registry, though. There is no, but when you go to the sexual offender registry, then you can go into the Michigan Department of Corrections stuff to see what they were actually charged with and stuff, and you can see their cases. But as of a human trafficking registry, that does not exist. No.
And what I will say is there's a huge data challenge with doing that, and it's something that I am researching a lot because I absolutely think that the more data we have, the better we can do. If you're looking for good information online on human trafficking, Polaris Project has it. And if you're looking for locally free training about human trafficking, our center does provide that. One of our prevention staff could come out and it's about a 2-hour training for your group. So I know we're out of time.
Yes, I want to thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you for being here.
Let's close with a quick prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we hope that our activity here today will strengthen us to be strong Christians and witnesses and leaders for our young people so that they can make good decisions and not poor decisions. Be with us with the challenges of our life in this day and age, and we bless the guest speakers today. Amen.